Let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed up at night replaying a conversation that you had during the day over and over and over again in your head? It's like you just sit there and you dissect every word that you said, every word that they said, and you just wonder things like if you could have handled that conversation better. Or maybe you wonder what they're thinking about you now. And you try to tell yourself to let it go, but it's like your brain just refuses to listen. It is so exhausting, isn't it? It literally feels like you are just stuck in this endless loop. Like you are just reliving that moment over and over again on repeat, hoping that by over analyzing the situation, you will finally figure out the right answer. But let's be honest, that right answer never comes. And then the questions start piling up in your mind. The questions like, why did I say that? What if they misunderstand me? What if I made the wrong impression? I think that is honestly the worst one. And then suddenly, it's not just one small thing, right? Your mind just ends up spiraling, and now you're in that spiraling loop, and now it just feels like your entire world is crumbling apart, all while you're laying in bed trying to get sleep. I get it. Overthinking can be so draining, so paralyzing. It just robs you of your peace, your sleep, your energy, and worst of all, absolute worst of all, it makes you question yourself. It makes you question yourself and your worth. It makes you ask things like, am I too much? Am I not enough? Why can't I just stop? Oh, I have been there, okay? I know how heavy it feels to carry those thoughts all during the day, and then you bring them into bed with you at night, and then you just can't fall asleep. And it just feels like no matter how hard you try to let it go, your mind just doesn't want to give you permission to. If you're feeling this right now, I just want you to hear me out. You're not broken. Your brain isn't broken. And most importantly, you are not alone. So many people feel exactly like this, even if they don't show it. And the best part about this is that you don't have to stay stuck in this cycle. I'm going to share a story about one of my clients, and for confidentiality's sake, we're going to call her Sarah in this video. Okay, so Sarah, she's in her mid-20s. She's this vibrant, ambitious, full of potential entrepreneur. I love working with entrepreneurs. And on the outside, it looked like she had it all together. You know, when she came to me, right? She had a great business, she had close friends, she had big dreams for her future, but when I started to work with her and really dig deeper behind the scenes, it was very evident and clear that she was struggling. And what had started to happen is that overthinking had started to take over her life. So every decision, no matter how small, it just felt like she was walking through quicksand for her. So she would literally agonize whether or not to text someone back, right? Like, have you been there or not? She would replay conversations over and over again in her head to see if she said the wrong thing. And then she would just constantly worry if people were upset with her, right? That's a big one. And her brain was essentially running on overdrive. It was just questioning every move, every word, literally every moment. And what ended up happening is that one of our first sessions, she ended up admitting something to me that just completely broke my heart and just made me feel so much for her. And she said, I feel like my brain is against me. I feel like I can't trust myself anymore. And I need other people's validation and what they think. And I need to rely on them because I can't do it on my own because I can't trust my own thoughts. Like, how exhausting is that? And I have a feeling that you've been there, where you just constantly need other people to validate you and your decisions just to feel okay. It's an exhausting place to be. And Sarah's overthinking wasn't even just about small day-to-day decisions. It had started to seep into literally every area of her life. So, she would question her relationships. She would doubt her abilities at work. She even began to wonder if she was worthy of the life that she had dreamed of and if she was capable of it, right? This thing seeps into all these other areas of her life. And she even told me once that she felt like a prisoner in her own mind. She was just second guessing everything to the point where she just felt paralyzed. Here's something that I want you to understand through this example is that Sarah's brain wasn't working against her. Very important for you to know. It wasn't broken. Her overthinking was actually her brain's way of trying to protect her. And this is how I want you to start seeing your overthinking too. It's something that I see all the time with even like my other clients, right? Your brain creates these patterns because at some point in your life, these patterns served a purpose for you. So, for example, for Sarah, this habit of overthinking was actually tied to her deep need to feel safe. So, what had happened with her is that she learned at an early age that tuning into other people, so what they thought, what they felt, how they reacted, essentially would keep her out of trouble. It became her survival strategy at that age. And maybe that's what's happening to you too. Start tuning into this. I want you to recognize that overthinking isn't a flaw or a failure on your own part. It's your brain actually trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. The problem is that this strategy, while it may have served you in the past when you were a young little kiddo, it is now holding you back from the life that you want to live. So, bringing us back to Sarah's example, we really worked together through this. I helped her understand that her overthinking was a symptom of deeper patterns that were happening in her mind and her body, right? So these were patterns rooted in her nervous system, patterns rooted in her self-belief, and even in her body's own health. And then once we really started to address these root causes, everything began to change for her. She essentially learned how to calm her overactive mind. She learned how to trust herself. And most importantly, she learned how to really let go of that need for constant validation. And let me tell you here, okay? Watching her step into her power was seriously one of the most beautiful, amazing transformations that I have seen in my life, right? So if any part of Sarah's story feels familiar to you, I really want you to know this. You're not alone. You're not alone, and most importantly, you don't have to stay stuck in the cycle. Just like Sarah, you can actually break free from overthinking and reclaim your confidence, your peace, and most importantly, your life. Sarah's story, I find, is just such a powerful example of how overthinking can really take hold and can become this cycle that feels literally impossible to break. And what I want you to see too is that overthinking becomes a problem when your brain starts to go into this hyper detail mode where it's just constantly scanning the environment for potential threats. Maybe it's replaying every interaction and it's just questioning everything that's happening in your external environment. I want you to think of it like your mind has just opened a million tabs at once and it's analyzing every word, every glance, every little thing, and it just has no idea how to really shut these tabs down. And you know what? Maybe you've been there, right? Maybe you've been there where you're replaying a conversation in your head, where you're really just trying to dissect the tone of someone's voice on their face, right? And asking yourself questions like, were they annoyed? Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? And then your mind just goes even further than that. And you start to think thoughts like, what if they think less of me? What if they tell someone else? Or what if I have like ruined everything? And it just feels endless. And the truth is that most of these things, like let's be honest, that you're worrying about don't even actually exist. They are just scenarios your brain is fabricating in your mind to try to make sense of the unknown. Super important you start seeing things this way. So why does this actually happen? Right? You may be thinking, why does my brain think this way? And that's because your brain is wired to keep you safe, right? It's a survival mechanism. Somewhere deep inside, your mind believes that by going over every little tiny detail, by over preparing, and by over analyzing, it can protect you from pain. And your brain doesn't like pain. It can protect you from pain, from rejection, or failure. And it thinks that if I figure everything out now, then nothing can catch me off guard later. But then here's the problem. Instead of it actually protecting you, this constant analysis, I'm sure you can agree with this, ends up making you feel more trapped in your life. It ends up keeping you more stuck. It ends up making you feeling overwhelmed and, worst of all, really disconnected from the present moment. Like, think about when you are in this state where you're busy and you're questioning and you're just like doubting everything, you're not really living. You are just like caught up in this mental spiral that robs you of your peace. And worst of all, it keeps you from experiencing joy or clarity. My patient Sarah told me once that I feel like my brain is my worst enemy. And I don't want you to think of your brain like that, because the truth is that your brain isn't your worst enemy. Your brain is simply doing the best that it can with the tools that it has. And the challenge is that this hyper detail mode is a strategy that's rooted in fear and not in trust. And when you're living in that state of fear, so that fear of making the wrong choice, the fear of being judged, the fear of the unknown, you can't move forward. And then you end up running around in circles, essentially exhausting yourself emotionally and physically. And here's the most beautiful part about all of this. Just because your brain is used to overthinking doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Overthinking is a habit. Yes, it's probably a deeply ingrained habit, but it's still a habit. And just like any habit, it can be changed. And you can literally learn how to quiet your mind. You can learn how to trust your decisions. And most importantly, you can learn how to let go of the need to overanalyze everything. And you can teach your brain that it is safe to let go, that it's safe to be present, and that it is safe to trust yourself. I truly think that's where the real transformation begins. One of the biggest reasons, let's get into that, as to why people overthink is because they're people pleasers, or you might be a people pleasers. If this sounds like you, let me tell you, you're not alone. I work with so many people who people please. And overthinking oftentimes goes hand in hand with really this deep need to make other people happy, to avoid conflict, and to essentially always be seen as like easygoing or the good one. And this pattern, again, likely really started early on in your life. So maybe you grew up in an environment where the mood of the room essentially dictated how you felt. And if you could sense tension, what would happen is that you would just quickly adjust yourself by maybe being more agreeable or helpful, or maybe it's invisible, so that you could essentially avoid any problems around you in conflict. And maybe expressing your true feelings wasn't even an option in the home that you grew up in, or maybe you learned that your worth actually came from being someone who is accommodating and someone who keeps the peace in their home. Here's the thing. This wasn't your fault. Your brain, again, was trying to protect you. It essentially taught you to read every little detail about the people around you, right? So this includes their tone, their body, their language, their energy. And because back then, being tuned into others essentially felt like survival, right? And that's what you had to do. And over time, what ended up happening is that this hyper awareness essentially became like second nature. And now, as an adult, this habit shows up as overthinking, where you just replay that conversation over and over again in your head, where you end up being worried that you might have said something wrong. And then you essentially second guess your decisions, and you're unsure about how they're going to affect other people, right? You might analyze every single interaction where you're looking for signs of approval or maybe signs of disapproval. And it's kind of like, again, your brain is just constantly scanning for ways to fix things before they even end up going wrong in your environment. And while this might feel like it's keeping you safe in the moment, the truth is that it's not, right? It really isn't. This is where people pleasing becomes self-abandonment. When you are so focused on what other people think, on what they feel or need, you completely lose sight of your own needs. You give away your energy, your voice, and even your identity just to make sure you don't upset anyone else. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you actually made a decision entirely for yourself? And it's not because what someone else wanted, not because that was what was expected of you, but it's because it's what you truly needed, right? Like, think about that. And if that feels hard to answer, it's probably because overthinking has convinced you that everyone else's feelings matter way more than your own. And here's the truth. Overthinking isn't solving anything. It's just that cycle, right? And the more that you rely on this cycle, the more that you essentially end up reinforcing the belief that your safety depends on other people's approval. And how do you break that cycle? You break that cycle by starting to trust yourself again. It's about realizing that your needs, that your boundaries, and that your voice matter just as much as anyone else's. And it's about remembering that you don't need to carry the emotional weight of everybody around you, because that's exhausting and it's not your responsibility. Most importantly, it's about really giving yourself permission to stop overthinking, to stop people pleasing, and to really start showing up in a way that is real and true and authentic to you, because that is where the true peace and freedom that you crave live. Another big reason, let's keep going through these, as to why you overthink is that a lot of people don't realize the connection between your body and your mind. If you are someone who, for example, struggles with a lot of overthinking, have you ever considered, I want to take a step back, have you ever considered what's happening in your body might actually be playing a huge role in your overthinking? Because if you haven't considered that, you should. And that's because your mind and your body are deeply intertwined. And when your body is out of balance, it can literally fuel that endless mental chatter. So take your gut, for example. It's oftentimes called your second brain, and it's because of the way it communicates with your mind. When your gut health is off, right? So whether it's because of inflammation or nutrient deficiencies or even poor digestion, it can literally throw your whole system out of whack. And when that ends up happening, your brain is going to feel it. Another big factor is also blood sugar dysregulation. So if your blood sugar is constantly spiking and crashing, it can again put you in this place where you're feeling jittery, where you're unfocused and on edge. And that physical instability essentially ends up translating into mental instability. It's like trying to stay calm in a storm, but it's literally impossible because the storm is already there and your body's already sending signals of chaos to your brain, and so you can't control your thinking. And also, let's not forget hormones. If you have ever noticed your overthinking ramps up at certain times of the month, that is not a coincidence. Not a coincidence at all. Hormonal fluctuations, especially during your menstrual cycle, can literally amplify your anxious thoughts, and it can make it way, way harder for you to regulate your emotions. So really, here's the bottom line. If your body isn't functioning at its best, your mind can't either. Overthinking isn't always just a mindset problem. It's oftentimes a symptom of something way deeper that's happening in your body, right? You have to look at the mind and body at the same time. And once you actually start addressing these root causes of the body, so things like your gut health, your blood sugar, your hormones, you essentially create a really strong and powerful foundation for your mind to feel that calm, to feel that focus and resilience. This is why the work that I do with my patients, it always starts with the body and it starts with the mind. Because when both of these things are aligned, that's when you truly, truly thrive. Now, let's keep going through the reasons as to why overthinking can happen. Another big reason here is an overactive nervous system. So if you've ever felt like your thoughts are just racing a mile a minute, or if you feel like your mind is just stuck on high alert, it's probably because your nervous system is stuck in that hyperdrive state. So let's go through how it works. So your body essentially has this amazing built-in system that's designed to help to keep you safe, right? It's called the fight or flight response. That's your stress nervous system. And the stress nervous system is supposed to kick in when there's real danger. So like a car speeding towards you, or if you're in a situation where you might need to act quickly, and we want this nervous system to turn on. But the problem for so many of us is that this nervous system gets stuck in that on position, right? When you're in that stress state, it gets stuck in the on position. And when your body is stuck in that fight or flight mode, your brain starts scanning your environment for threats, even when there really isn't anything there. So you might notice your mind latching onto small things, or, blowing them out of proportion, or spiraling even into worst case scenario. This hypervigilance isn't because you are overreacting. It's because your nervous system is essentially stuck in this survival mode. And when your body feels unsafe, it's literally impossible for your mind to fully relax. So instead of being, calm and clear, your thoughts just end up feeling really scattered. And it's so easy to just get caught up in these cycles of overthinking. It's just constant mental activity. It just really drains your energy when you're stuck in this state. And essentially, it's being in this on state that leads to burnout, emotional fatigue, and then you could even experience physical symptoms in your body like tension or difficulty sleeping because of it. So the truth here is that your nervous system needs to feel safe in order for your mind to calm down. This is why nervous system regulation is such a key part of overcoming overthinking. When you really learn how to bring your body out of fight or flight mode and really into that state of calm, everything essentially shifts for you. Your thoughts can become clear, your emotions feel more balanced, and you feel like you're able to approach challenges with a much bigger sense of confidence and ease. And it's not just about quieting your mind, really, when you think about it, it's about really teaching your body that it's okay to feel safe. So important. Another big reason why overthinking can take over is because of a lack of emotional regulation skills, right? Like, let's face it, most of us were never taught how to actually process our emotion. Instead, we were told things like, don't cry, just get over it, or you're just overreacting. So, what happens? You end up growing up not knowing what to do with uncomfortable feelings. So it's like the anger or sadness or fear, you just don't know what to do with that. And when these emotions end up coming up, your mind essentially comes in and tries to fix them. It's like your brain is just saying, don't worry, I'll handle this. And it just starts analyzing everything in your environment, right? Which is why, it thinks about things like, why do you feel this way, and how to stop it, and all of these things, right? So all those thoughts come flooding in. And this is something important for you to note, is that these emotions aren't like puzzles or things for your brain to actually solve. These emotions are experiences that need to be felt and released. But if you've never learned how to actually sit with the discomfort, that process can feel impossible. And instead of letting these emotions actually flow through you, your mind just like grabs hold of them, trying to think that if it tries to analyze and problem solve, that's the way out. So you replay the situation, so you analyze the conversations, and you question yourself, hoping that you can just think long enough that you will somehow feel better and get through this, and then you don't. And the reality is that, again, your emotions are meant to move. They're meant to move through you. That's their job. And when you suppress your emotions, or when you try to think your way around them, they got stuck. And really, that's when overthinking kicks into high gear. So you might feel like you are in control because you're analyzing everything, but what you're actually doing in these moments is you're just avoiding the deeper work of feeling. And I know that's hard. I know it is. But you're avoiding it. You're avoiding the feeling and the processing. So learning how to regulate your emotions is an absolute game changer. And again, when you think about this, it's about just giving yourself permission to feel what comes up without the judgment or without the resistance. And that on its own is going to calm that so much. And when you can do that, your mind doesn't feel the need to jump in and take over and question. And instead of spiraling and overthinking, you can actually start to approach challenges with so much more clarity and calm. So it's not about avoiding emotions, it's about learning how to powerfully let them flow through you so that they don't control you. All right. And now let's end off by talking about the stories that you tell yourself and how that can also lead to overthinking. Right? These stories, essentially, these are your stories about the world and how you fit into the world, and they're also called your limiting beliefs. These are, then the way that I want you to think about it, like those ingrained thoughts, right? That whisper in your mind, at the back of your mind, like you're not good enough, or that you always mess things up, or that you'll never figure this out. These thoughts, they feel like truths, right? They literally feel like truths, and that's because they have been with you for so long. So where did these stories and these limiting beliefs come from? Most of the time, they are honestly rooted very much in your early experiences. So maybe someone in your life intentionally, or, let's hope unintentionally, made you feel like you had to earn their love or their approval. Or maybe you were criticized for making mistakes. Or maybe your successes were unfortunately overlooked, and they just left you feeling the belief that no matter what you do, it's just never going to be enough. So these moments might have seemed really small at the time, but they planted seeds. They planted seeds in your mind of self-doubt, of fear, and worst of all, of insecurity. And over time, these seeds essentially grew into stories that now shape how you see yourself and essentially your potential. And here's really where overthinking comes in. Okay, so overthinking, I want you to imagine it like being this like megaphone for these limiting beliefs. When your mind is stuck in this cycle of overanalyzing, it's not just going to, stop replaying those situations or those outcomes, right? It's essentially going to reinforce those old stories. So for example, if you are, say you're questioning if you said the wrong thing in a conversation, it happens to us all the time. So the underlying story might be, I always mess things up. Or if you are hesitating to make a decision, it might stem from, I am not capable of handling this. Or, what ends up happening is that the more that you overthink, the more that these beliefs essentially kind of just dig their heels into you and just get reinforced. And then overthinking becomes this loop, right? Where it's just like that limiting belief triggers the overthinking, and then the overthinking strengthens that belief, and they just work in this loop together. And again, this is just exhausting because when you're stuck in this loop, you're stuck in fear and doubt and you don't get anywhere. And here's the truth that you need to hear. These stories are not facts. They're not facts. These stories are simply interpretations. They are interpretations your mind has created based on past experiences. And just like how they were created, they can be rewritten. Let that empower you. You have the power to challenge these beliefs and really tell yourself a new story. You have the power to tell yourself a story that empowers you instead of holding you back. And it starts with awareness. When you catch yourself overthinking, pause and ask, what is the story I am telling myself right now? Is it that I am not good enough? That I'm not capable? That I'll fail? And then I want you to challenge that story. And I want you to ask yourself, what evidence do you have that it's true? And just as importantly, what evidence do you have that it's not true? Rewriting your narrative isn't just about pretending that everything is perfect or ignoring challenges. It's about shifting the way that you see yourself and your potential. It's about really recognizing that you are so much more than your past, than your mistakes, and really more than the stories that once defined you and who you are. And when you start to rewrite these beliefs, overthinking is like, it leaves like this. Because you just step out of that loop of self-doubt and you step into this place of clarity and confidence and best of all, possibility. Overthinking isn't something that you're stuck with forever. That's the good news here. It's not a personality trait, so stop talking about it like it is, and it's definitely not a life sentence. You can break free from it. And I've seen it happen time and time again. Take my patient Sarah, for example. She's thriving, and I am so proud of her. And it's because she's no longer caught in these endless mental loops. It's not like her overthinking's gone forever, but it's no longer consuming her in the way that it did before. And instead, she's really learning how to trust herself. She's learned how to regulate her emotions. She's learned how to quiet her mind, and she's really just learned how to let go of that need for constant validation. And so, how did she do it? It was magic, right? It wasn't magic. It was an intentional practice. And she worked on it every single day, right? We worked together to address those root causes of her overthinking. So, and those root causes were both in her mind and body. You need to do that together. And she learned how to calm her overactive nervous system. She learned how to nourish her body so that it could support her mental clarity. And she learned how to rewrite those old limiting beliefs that had been holding her back for years. And this is exactly what I help my patients practice through my Brain Max method. Overthinking isn't just about what's happening in your mind, right? I'm going to emphasize that again. It's often tied to those deeper patterns. You need to look deeper in your body, in your nervous system, and even in your mindset. And that's why I really like to take a holistic approach with the stuff that I do, right? We tackle it from all angles. We tackle it from your mind, your body, the stories that you tell yourself. That's how you truly heal as a whole, right? And it's not just about, boom, slapping on a Band-Aid on symptoms. No, because that doesn't fix anything. It's about getting to the root of the issue, because that's where true healing comes from, so that you can feel confident, you can feel in control of your thoughts and just calm and at peace again. So if you're ready to take that first step, I want to invite you to book a 30-minute complimentary breakthrough session with me. And in this session, this is where we are going to dive into the real reasons behind your overthinking, okay? So, your unique story, your triggers, and really map out a plan that's tailored for you. So if there's something you're interested in, the link is in the description below. I would love, 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 love to help you create the clarity and peace that honestly you deserve. I truly think you do. To end it off, here is what I want you to remember. Overthinking does not define you. It is something that you are experiencing in a moment. It's not who you are. And don't make it be your personality trait, okay? You're not broken. You are not failing. You are simply human. And the truth is that the fact that you're here just watching this video, just searching for answers, really tells me that you are ready to take control of this part of your life and your mind. Your mind is so, so powerful. It's not your enemy. Don't make it your enemy. And your mind is your most powerful tool. And when you learn how to work with it instead of fighting against it, there is truly no limit to what you can achieve. All right? Overthinking doesn't have to control you anymore. You've already taken the first step by showing up here. Now it's time to take that next step. I believe in you. I know that you have what it takes to really break free from this and step into that version of yourself that just feels calm, that feels confident, and most importantly, that feels at peace because you deserve that. And if no one has told you that today, I am here to tell you that now. You've got this.